from the University of Manchester, and he's just submitted his thesis last Monday. His paper is called Analytical Gameplay and the Politics of Cognitive Mapping.
Please stand by now, Mr. Will resume shortly. Sorry about that. I'll just get straight to it then. So the paper is called Analytical Gameplay and the Politics of Cognitive Mapping. I'll start with some statements that are probably now quite well known in game studies. With a computer game, given that it is now the computer that upholds the rules, it is possible to learn the rules as it is being played, similarly. So the feedback loops between player and game allow for a meaningful mode of interaction, even when the player's knowledge of the rules is low. As this knowledge increases, the loops enable for more of the game to be uncovered, and more rules to be revealed, and so on. Arsenault and Perron's concept of the magic cycle lends itself as a useful starting point from which to consider the game's activity with regard to what the authors call the analytical as opposed to the implementation dimension of gameplay. By this, they refer to the process by which the player gains knowledge about the mechanics of the games, rather than the process by which they train or hone their skills at implementing certain procedures, such as the special moves in the fighting game. For Arsenault and Perron, the player analyzes the game's output with a view to building a mental model of the workings of the game. While playing a video game, the gamer has to go in circles around a question or the challenges that the game poses, accumulating information about the causal consequences of various actions. So this quote is, "At first, right after the game's output, he must, the player, analyze the information available to him while keeping in mind as well the potential future states of the game through his perceptual and cognitive activity, which relies on the bottom-up, data-driven and top-down, concept-driven processes. If the unfolding of the action is new and it is difficult to predict what will come next, the gamer will rely more on images, sounds and or force feedback in trying to make sense of such a situation. The bottom-up process will be dominant, but if the beginning of the action matches a general knowledge schema, context, or a general schema learned from past experience of other texts, co-texts, the top-down process takes the lead, and the gamer will look for a confirmation of his expectations. Usually, the first step is to learn the consequences of pressing the various buttons. Later on, the player will have noticed more complex causal and other regularities, such as that the placement of coins in many Super Mario Bros. Games suggests pathways for the player to follow that will lead them to secret parts of the level. On the basis of their observations, the player progressively constructs a mental model of the inner workings of the game with which to inform their gaming actions. There is a feedback loop between first, the player's testing of the validity of their model and the actions that they take on the assumption that it is true, and second, the audio-visual feedback given to them by the game in response to their actions, which may prompt further refinement or hypothesizing. As the player's mental model gains sophistication, there is a shift in the experience of the game from a predominantly bottom-up process where individual elements are analyzed before reacting, to top-down processes where a mental image of the game system guides the gamer's reactions and expectations. Ted Friedman describes this process of learning to play the computer game as one of mystification, in which one succeeds by discovering how the software is put together. The player molds her or his strategy through trial and error experimentation to see what works, which actions are rewarded, and which are punished. Ted Friedman has argued that playing a computer game trains one to think like a computer, rather than a particular kind of subject, which is an idea that has been echoed by James Newman. Friedman has drawn on the work of game designers such as Will Wright and Chris Crawford to develop his view of playing digital games as a form of systems cognition. The player comes to see and experience their own actions in relation to a greater systematic whole. Since the player is required to comprehend a myriad of complex interrelationships in order to understand how to complete the game, they become subsequently equipped, once the game is over, with a new template with which to interpret, understand, and cognitively map the city around them. Could be something else, other than the city. The systems cognition involved has been argued to impart to us a more astute sense of the relational complexity between various processes. Frederick Jameson's notion of cognitive mapping hinges on a dialectic of immediate perception and imaginative or imaginary conception, which is our ability to extrapolate from the mental map we have of our immediate perceptible situation to a larger imaginary spatial context. This is said to be essential for a socialist politics in a postmodern age that aims to render the world more intelligible and to combat alienation. For Jameson, the essential problem of political action is the intelligibility of the world itself. Subjects need to comprehend their own situation or position. They require the means to make a cognitive map. Following globalization, we can no longer, as once we could under an earlier phase of capitalism, extrapolate from our local experiences in order to develop a map of the global economic system that determined them, which is a failure that produces a sense of alienation from a world that we do not find intelligible. The present historical contradiction is one in which the truth of our social life as a whole, in Georg Lukács's terms, as a totality, is increasingly irreconcilable with the possibilities of aesthetic expression or articulation available to us. Jameson compares the situation of the individual in late capitalist society to that of being in a postmodern urban landscape, a space in which people are unable to map in their minds either their own position or the urban totality in which they find themselves. The cognitive map, then, is enlisted to enable a situational representation on the part of the individual subject to that vaster and properly unrepresentable totality, which is the ensemble of society's structures as a whole. Computer gameplay bears relevance to this insofar as they involve a dialectic of extrapolating from our immediate experiences in order to understand the systematic whole, which then imparts us with further knowledge with which to comprehend our immediate experiences. That is to say, in the learning cycle involved in computer games, we are effectively trained to hypothesize in such a way as to progressively comprehend the workings of the game. The unstated assumption at work here involves the idea that this training rubs off on us, as it were, and we are able to bring this attitude to the world outside of games and come to understand the larger context on the basis of the mental maps that we are now equipped to chart, and also the imaginative leap of being able to extrapolate from them. However, Jameson's notion of cognitive mapping is itself problematic when applied to computer games, insofar as it requires the individual to represent what is, on Jameson's own terms, the unrepresentable global system or totality itself, a project that arguably cannot be accomplished. It is unrepresentable because of its theoretical commitments. Conveyed in basic terms, for Jameson, the concept of totality functions as a methodological standard, an unrepresentable horizon which marks the limits of our thought. It has been taken to designate a specific entity which is empirically verifiable and ultimately representable. However, Jameson seems to say that we can grasp it only with a total transformation of social relations. The concept of totality, or of cognitively mapping our relation to the mode of production of global capitalism, therefore, is already inscribed within our discourse as a limit that we cannot hope to entirely grasp. So on this point, if the analytical side of playing computer games is an instance of successfully cognitively mapping the localized domain of the game, and doing so within the context of being unable to do so with respect to the world, the disparity may partly account for the pleasure we have in gaming. That is to say, the analytical comprehension involved in gameplay is a structural homology or substitute for an activity that we are otherwise unable to do. It is a key form of intelligibility or comprehension. It is because we cannot ordinarily do it that the successful accomplishment as part of the game is very rewarding. However, it is much less clear that it is helpful with regard to our ability to cognitively map the world. A further question, in fact, that arises out of the argument is as follows. What would it actually mean for us to take what we have learned from cognitively mapping in games, to use the adeptness with which we do so, and to apply it to comprehend our own situation in the world? If there was a fundamentally ludic orientation with respect to the game, does this require that we see life and the world as a game, which arguably involves no small amount of cynicism in order to deconstruct it in the same manner? Does the ludic orientation get left behind in the transition and application of the skills we have learned from games to the world? Some commentators, such as Paul Starr, have expressed concerns about the black box nature of the models in games that removes them from the criticism and debate that policy simulations receive. Friedman has also been concerned about the so-called air of mystery around computer games as simulations, which conceals their constructiveness and the fact that they simulate the designer's theories only. But do players actually approach games with such a serious attitude, with the intent of using games to extend their knowledge of the world? Players arguably adopt a much more cynical attitude towards the procedurality of the game than those writers suppose. As Chris Crawford has remarked, once the game has been comprehended by players, its limitations and design flaws are better understood. This implies, if anything, that the more the players have a command of the game, the more they are able to see its deficiencies as a simulation of reality, or even of a coherent fictional world. So instead of an aesthetics of cognitive mapping that leaves us with a renewed sense of how to gauge the world, there is perhaps in game culture an aesthetics or connoisseurship of games failing as simulations and being reductively kitsch. To give a slightly ridiculous example, although it's relevant with respect to the coherence and plausibility of fictional worlds, in Magic the Gathering, which has been made into computer games several times, representing squirrels represented as 1/1s can block and kill the gigantic Lovecraftian horror emerald represented as a 15, highest power and toughness of any creature in the game, although the squirrels would have to be flying to do so. We can no doubt think of many other less absurd examples of equivalences in computer games, but that would still be absurd on some level. The fact that we are able to accept them and even enjoy them is perhaps indicative of our ludic attitude. In talking about Starr and Crawford, however, we have shifted here between two related questions. That is to say, from the first, which is the one that this paper started with, to the second, although the questions are certainly connected with one another. The first one was, in relation to cognitive mapping, how do we go about comprehending the world and our relation in it? Do computer games help us to do this? And the second was, are computer games adequate simulations of processes that take place in the world? It is possible for the first question to be answered to be true, for computer games to assist us, even if the second is not, insofar as computer games train us to think in a way that would be conducive towards this. That is to say, they teach us the necessary structures of thinking. However, I have argued that this is not the case. This is not just because of Jameson's forbidding requirements on what it would mean to comprehend totality, since we can substitute that and try to operate with a less stringent conception of what it means to comprehend our position in the world, but also because of the fundamentally ludic orientation that is involved. It is also possible for the second to be the case, that there are games that can be good simulations of flying a passenger plane, for example, but which do not help us to comprehend the world. This may be because the structures of thought that they teach us only have a limited applicability, or don't help us understand the nature of the social and economic relations that play such a significant role in our lives. So the following question emerges, playing devil's advocate. If the analytical dimension of game learning is in fact in sync with the logos of informatics and control, as Galloway says, where playing a computer game involves identifying with the simulation itself, or thinking like a computer, then the real political project may be to defy that logos. This means opposing the very bottom-up form of learning characteristic of so many games. But it seems wrong-footed to encourage players to play without attempting to comprehend the games in this way. So therefore it seems to fall on the design of the games themselves. Is it possible to create a game that intentionally frustrates the analytical learning process without being nonsensical or merely evidencing bad design? At least two options present themselves here. First, where the game rules themselves change the different parts of the game, so that what the player thought they had consolidated as game knowledge at one point later becomes obsolete. This suffers the disadvantage that the regularities could could still be mapped and memorized by the player and known to them on the second playthrough. So in this way, it perhaps merely extends the analytical learning cycle. Second, where the information that could be reliably inferred by the player is intentionally deceptive. For example, the number of attacks it takes to defeat a particular enemy is programmed to be due not to the set number of hit points allocated to that enemy, but perhaps to the colour of the floor section on which it was at the time, the day of the week, or the last digit on display in the in-game timer. This kind of deceptiveness calls for a flouting of the gaming conventions that function as building blocks in the analytical learning process. This is likely to be frustrating for the player, but it might not have the desired effect, in the sense that frustrating the bottom-up analytical process is not the same as preventing it from still occurring when the arbitrary difficulties are removed, nor is it the same as presenting an alternative to the process. The most it can do is to show us the taken for grantedness of the way in which we approach games, and to denaturalize this analytic learning process. So I'll finish with 3 questions. First, what is left to us in terms of conceiving of games that do something interesting about the learning cycle that is normally involved in games? Second, what is the political significance of this learning cycle if it does not assist our cognitive mapping? And third, what is the significance of our not being able to, or having a difficulty in being able to, leave this structure of game learning behind? And that's the end. Thank you.
So many thought-provoking points, discussions, and in a way, I think 3 papers related so well together, and just think, in a way, you respond to some of the concerns raised in other. You respond to some of the concerns raised in other papers. It could be if we had more time, let's say all 3 come up and we'll have like another discussion. But since obviously we're constrained for time, that will have to happen in the coffee break, and we'll carry on. But now we'll take questions just for Feng. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to come back to the magic cycle of learning that you described from Asenold and Perron, and I want to play back the question that Ollie played to me. I want to play it back to you and ask what's game specific about this way of learning, because the way you described it, it sounded like any activity that we do something new could be described this way. I didn't see something specific for learning inside of games. Is that a correct assumption, or did I miss that?
You mean it's a learning cycle that's applicable elsewhere, outside of games?
Yeah. It sounded to me like it describes on a very high level every kind of learning.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, there are people who have made that argument. I think James Gee's made that argument, and there have been people who have commented about that, such as Kirkpatrick and Nielsen, who say that this, or something similar, this cycle of coupling and habituation and denaturalization and so on is quite fundamental to forms of learning process. But I think this is precisely the question of its political significance, because surely we can envisage other forms of learning which perhaps don't take this structural form, and insofar as games do, then do games end up limiting the ways in which we think that learning happens. So, for example, I think there's something very interesting about the speed of the feedback loops involved, and so the hypothesizing, the testing, and the conclusion happens at a very fast rate, which either comes out to be true or false, and it's very scientific, and that's very endemic to this structure of learning. But we might conceive of, for example, ways in which we gain knowledge subliminally or by reflecting on things that we already know through this kind of synthesizing process. And insofar as that's not captured by this learning cycle, then it raises questions about what kinds of learning are being neglected by games, or whether games would be capable of introducing learning cycles that are more akin to those rather than this particular one that's been described. Does that answer your question? Or maybe you'd like to add something else?
The speed, I would argue, when you try to learn flying a plane, and you also have learn quite quickly from action and reaction and stuff. But yeah, I just maybe I should look into the literature, but I just don't see what's the distinction between this description of learning and other description of learning versus games and non-games. I try to find this kind of tabulation for.
I think there'll definitely be blurred boundaries. I don't think it's possible to make the case that there's a clear cut-off at where what we would define as computer games introduce something which does not happen elsewhere.
Thank you.
Could I just insert a comment here? I'm wondering if that might actually be sort of the reason, I mean, you making this connection with kind of the games and the political effect of games, the fact that they're not self-bounded, not self-enclosed, but actually, as you say, kind of the learning process might not be specific to that, but might actually be translatable in a way. Is that?
Can you put that
The fact that you're finding a connection, so you're making the connection between games, but also the sort of more political application, or outside games, so to speak. That boundary, traversing that boundary, is made possible by the fact that perhaps what you're talking about isn't only specific to games. It's kind of it's part of it reinforces the argument.
I think it does bring up that question again about what is specific to games, which is a very difficult question, a very big question. I don't know if we can try and attempt to answer that now, but there's something about kind of algorithmic processes involved, which people might argue have a connection to the speed of feedback loops and the complexity of the processes. And so this naturally inclines itself to perhaps being taking the form of a particular structure of learning. Maybe it can take other forms, but insofar as it does this, and other things may do these processes as well, then that raises the question which was earlier raised about boundaries and the relevance of this process to things outside of computer games.
Thanks. Not really a question, but further to this point about the distinction that Michael raised, it felt to me that you did touch on it. A more direct answer to Michael when you said that it's not perhaps this learning process that exists uniquely within games, but it's the fact that it is satisfied and bounded by a finite system that can be comprehended. That seems to go back to what Peter raised in the previous Q&A about repressive sublimation, although you didn't put it in those terms. But isn't this the danger that you're getting at with games, that they satisfy that process rather than the process being unique to games?
Well, I have to agree with what I said. Yes, it hangs the questions I raised at the end about games which might try and frustrate this process, and also the extended questions attached to that, which would be what are the constraints on making games that would frustrate that. would they be playable? Would there be this kind of sense of enjoyment that would lead them to be played in the first place? So, yeah, I don't disagree with what you say.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully this isn't the same question, but just trying to understand what you're saying about cognitive mapping and the relationship to a simplified world that allows you to form your own cognitive map of something that arguably is already a cognitive map, which is the game world that has been created by the team making the artifact. The player forms their cognitive map of the simplification of the game world, and to me, if I'm thinking of, I've just finished playing this game and I'm walking home, I have a sense of satisfaction and pleasure because in a simplified world, I've lived through the purpose that was given to me that I could understand, and I've satisfied that, so I sort of feel good about myself. Whereas, because that, the simplified world, simplified sense of purpose, I can understand that relationship very closely, whereas in my regular life, I can't simplify the totality of my existence into a sense of purpose, so therefore I have this sort of constant, existential frustration of, what the hell am I doing with myself? So, if you subvert this process, do we naturally assume that the game would be displeasurable because we're not encouraging the player to realise the instrumentalisation of their computational rationality and rewarding that? Instead, saying, well, yeah, if you don't give people this sense of purpose through rewarding irrational behaviour, should we assume that the game will be displeasurable without a clear sense of purpose? Would that be a rational sort of connection to make between those functions?
I think that would be that would be a fine connection to make, but there would maybe be some additional complexities involved. So when you talked about the player being able to cognitively map the game and that corresponding or being in sync with the map that's being constructed by the designers, maybe there could be instances where that's not the case, but still there's a sense of pleasure insofar as the kind of model that's being constructed by the player, even though it doesn't correspond, it has a coherence to it, given that it takes place within this particular algorithmic structure. Or it may even end up surpassing, and this brings in a kind of messy question about intentions as well. It may even surpass the intentions of the designers, as in, for example, Smash Brothers Melee, where the sophistication of the laws that govern the game ended up informing kinds of player behaviour that exceeded the intentions of the designers as well. So we have this perhaps slightly messy terrain where it's arguable that the player cannot even accurately create a cognitive map of the intentions or of the designers of what the game was. So that's a kind of occupies perhaps a numinal territory outside of the means with which we have as players to hypothesize and test. So maybe there's a lack of synchronicity there, but that doesn't necessarily affect that there would be kind of pleasure in the gameplay. And as for the displeasure of being unable to do so, maybe this is relevant in relation to some of the From Software games where these cryptic questions come up, and you might feel that an artifact or something should do something if you enact a certain number of processes on it, but it doesn't. But then that maybe is pleasurable insofar as it's quite intriguing. It might end up getting you to try other things on it, even though it ultimately does lead to frustration. So I just wanted to say those points perhaps as a way of kind of attaching them to that question.
Thank you.
So
I think we'll defer other questions to the coffee break. Thank you, Feng.